My name is Shane Bradt. I work at the University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension. And so the idea behind this talk is to take some of the tips and tricks that I've developed for myself. And I did look up, I now have 345 dashboards in my ArcGIS online account. Most of them are terrible, but I've used it quite a bit. And just to try to share, to maybe have people benefit from my struggles and successes, and also hopefully over the course of the next few days learn from all of you. But I'll just say a few disclaimers that if you don't agree with me, that's okay. Like, some of these are my ideas. They may work for you, they may not. You might know some of these things, but I doubt you know all of them. So there's always little tidbits you could pick up. Each idea in and of itself might seem trivial, and you think, well, it doesn't seem like it would make that big of a difference, but I think they can really add up when they are together. And this is not a dashboard built in ArcGIS Experience Builder. These are tips for ArcGIS Dashboards. If you know what that means, great. If not, forget I said it and talk to me afterwards. But these are two different ways you can make dashboards within the Esri ecosystem. So I have 9 different tips, going from relatively easy to like your head might explode on the last one because it's at the end. First thing, think about your colors when you design dashboards, because you can make really bad choices, right? And I had somebody say once, I design it, what looks good to me, it looks good to my friend down the hall. You cannot do that. You have to think, when you're making these choices, what colors are you choosing? And there are simple tools you can find online that allow you to actually check those contrast ratios and see if they meet standards. But now built into dashboards, they have their own themes. So that's another option you could use, and all of those meet accessibility standards. But if you're like me and you don't want to use any of those and you design your own, you can crack behind the scenes and build your own custom theme. But you change one color, and you see all those little signs, they say these do not work anymore. So you could use something like Color Brewer, perhaps, to grab some different colors that meet accessibility. I wanted to design my own, of course, so I did find a website where you can put in a bunch of hex codes, and it will create all of the contrast ratios for all the combinations of all of those colors. And that helped me a tremendous amount to try to choose colors. So be careful with colors. And once you have decent colors, use them to guide people's visualization of your dashboard, right? So the default is a bunch of lines around things and not that much color, nothing to do with icons. So take advantage of those to compartmentalize parts of your dashboard. So my favorite trick is to get rid of all the outlines around all the elements with this, and you just make the outline color the same color as the background and all of those individual boxes, because sometimes I look at dashboards, all I see are the boxes around things and not the items. Use color effectively. So this top half has white in the background, the bottom half has gray. It just draws your eye differently. And use icons. And when I use icons, I try to make sure that the color of the icon matches the color of the text, matches the color of the money, because it draws your eyes all together. But since you're using an icon, it's not just the color that's differentiating it, it's also something else. And a few years ago, I saw somebody make a dashboard that actually had icons in their filters, and I thought, how do they do that? It's super easy. Do that. It helps visually to be able to scan and sort those individual items. So, make it first, choose good colors. Second, use them effectively. Okay, so text. Raise your hand if you've used load categories. Oh, wow. Okay, this is huge because I wanted to make a dashboard that showed the results of our evaluations for our workshops. And the one on the left is what it looked like at first, because that was the responses. But I really wanted people to be able to read them and see the graphs. And so how do you take this long text and make it something different on your dashboard? Is you click on load categories. And that's not only on serial charts, but other things. And then it allows you to type in what it is that you want to say. You're not constrained by what is in the database, is in the attributes. You can put whatever you want. And of course, that was a little crafty. And I said, all right, I want the yeses and the nos all to line up so that people can see things visually. And these blue ones are the ones I consider success, which is yes, I can do this, and I learned about it more in this workshop, or yes, I can do it only because of this workshop. Okay, those are the easy ones. So now we're going on to the slightly more complicated, using custom icons. So you can do a whole bunch of things with custom icons. Number one, you can put color in icons. Number two, you can have icons that never existed in dashboards and put them in. And it seems like that would be cool, except you hit this. Custom icons, SVG code. So I was like, I really need to figure this out. How does this work? It turns out it's not really that difficult. First, you need to have an image editing program. I use Pixelmator Pro. I'm a Mac user. Like, that's a Mac-only program. But a lot of editing programs will let you save an SVG file. So I actually took a screenshot of the image that I wanted, put it in here, saved it out as an SVG, and I said, great, so now what? Where's the code? So if you right-click and open it with the text editor, you can actually see the code inside of it. And all you have to do is figure out where to start and where to end, but it's really easy because it starts and ends with SVG and /SVG. So if you crack it open and you copy it, you paste that right back in, and you get your little custom icon. So these are like the colorized versions of the ones that Esri produced, and then others that are completely different from anything that's in the system. So you can make your own icons, but again, save it as an SVG, crack it open, and just copy and paste that code into the box. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, or that it's always a good idea, but these times it has been useful. This was something I learned not that long ago. Use a single column table as grouped values list. How many people use lists in dashboards? Okay. Lists are awesome, except when they're not, like this. And so I have been trying to deal with this for a long time in a bunch of dashboards, and it made me do all these hand-wavy ideas. But there's now a much better solution that I've found. I actually found an Esri community post, which was wonderful. So when you think of lists at first, you might think of lists like this. So you're showing a bunch of information. Maybe you have different sort of styles. Use Arcade to control what it looks like. But I use lists a lot like this, too, which is just one single list of things I want people to be able to click on, or one set of results. I like doing that because you have a lot more control over what it looks like instead of having it as a filter, like in the sidebar or in the header. And that works great when your data look like this. And when data look like this, it doesn't work at all. Why? Because, see this nice little grouped values, kind of like unique values in ArcGIS Pro? Guess what? With the list, it doesn't exist. And I understand philosophically why it doesn't exist, but because I don't even know what it would produce if you took one of those other ones. But when you just want like one column of stuff, it makes you do weird things. So like have two versions of every data layer. One that's the real data, and one that's like a list of things that'll show up well in my little list that's simple. Then you have to keep those in sync, pain in the butt. Fortunately, it turns out that tables do have group values. I took a deep sigh, I'm like, finally, this is it. So what if you took a grouped value table and you pointed it at that? Said, I just want the names of the lakes. And that's the only column in your table. You don't need any more. All you need is just a list of the names of the lakes. And then you make it, basically all the colors are just the same. I don't want to see the grids. I don't want all of these different things. And by the way, turning the thickness to 0 for some reason matters. I don't know why, but sometimes it matters. And then I hid the summary. So one column only looking at my thing. I made it so you can't see the grid lines, and I hid the summary. So I turned it into my boring looking single column table that actually functions exactly the way I want it. So you can click on the name of a lake. That is always updated based on the data table that you're actually using. And it looks and works the same. Mostly, you can't control it quite as much, but you can control it enough for me. And it gets rid of that problem completely of maintaining this like second set of data to make my little pick list look pretty that will then talk to my other data. So single column table to get past the grouped value list only works in simple instances, but immediately I changed some. And of course, nobody who was using it noticed, but I did. Number one, because it was much less of a pain. Every time I added a new lake to the database, I didn't have to go and update the other one. Also, the interactivity of it worked much, much better. Okay, number 6. Expand layout options with stacked of grouped tabs. Grouped stacks. Does everybody use grouping? Does anybody ever stack groups? It was funny. My friend, I always bring up her name. It was Rebecca Leela. She works for the U.S. Forest Service. And I remember her talking about grouping. And I know her well enough that I said, that's a terrible idea. Why would you ever do that? I don't understand. What's the point of groups? I don't get it. And she said, but you can stack groups. And I thought, wait, what? Oh, that was a moment. And it influenced basically every dashboard I've made since then. So what if you had multiple elements that you wanted to be able to have people toggle between? For example, like this bar graph on the top, a list, a display of the images. If you do it as normal, you have a whole bunch of different tabs, and your user has to know to click on the individual tabs. But if you group them all together and stack the groups, you can switch between them with a single tab. So how does that get constructed? Well, first, when you're dragging something to a new position, it shows right in your face. Hey, hold down the shift. I'll turn green. And then it'll cozy up 2 other items and become a group. And then you can click on the group and drag it. And if you put one group on top of another as a stack, you will then have something that looks like this. So in this thing that you see on the left, look, a single tab below, it actually has 6 different elements. 3 of them are actually data elements. 4 of them are things that I like to use to make it look pretty, where I basically put a color like outline around it so that visually it clings together. So when you click on this tab, you get to see the Bloom Watch information. And when you click on this tab, you get to see the other program's information. So you can toggle back and forth between these by clicking on a single tab. So all it is a group. Make group 1, make group 2. It'll look really ugly when you're doing that. And then you just grab one group and drop it on top of the other. If you want to get super extreme and ridiculous, you can actually have the entire dashboard be a stack. So here's one, then here's the other, and then here's the other. So these are not in an experience builder, but these are 3 different parts of the same dashboard. And the advantage of that is that they can all talk to each other. So an interaction on here, when you select this point on this map, it actually updates what's shown here on the 3rd tab. And I made a mistake in the linkages, and it took me about 4 hours to figure it out, because one of these items is talking to like 50 other items. So this is not advised to do all the time, but a bit ridiculous, but it shows sort of the lengths that you can go using that approach. Deep breaths, because we're about to get to the hard ones. Okay, this is maybe my favorite in some ways, and it's the one dashboard thing I mentioned in the GIS Educators Day talk I gave the other day. Control the look and flow of a dashboard using render only when filtered. And I think about this way too much, like how are people going to use this? And not when I'm talking about the people in this room, like people who are not in this room that don't know anything about GIS, don't know about dashboards. How can you control their experience so that they're likely to figure out how to use this? So there's lots of ways you can use it. And this, have you ever seen dashboards or maybe made, that's okay, made dashboards that say selection required on one or more elements? This is because people are using render only when filtered, but you can do a lot with render only when filtered. And instead of having this dashboard look like it does on the left before people click, it can look like it does on the right. Now, how does that work? When you choose this render only when filtered, which is in the action panel, and you have this element talking to this element, you say, hey, element over here, don't do anything until somebody's interacted with this one first. Render this one only when this one has been acted on. So this is the final version when people have made all their choices in the dashboard, and this is what it looks like before people have done any clicking. So I have little like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, and hide everything else. Make it not even in their face. Well, how did I do that? It's not tremendously difficult. You have to use this area, which is kind of hard to see that it's there, but if you scroll down and you look under the general options and you scroll to the bottom, you click no selection, you can actually type in there anything that you want it to display when it's waiting. It doesn't have to have that default text. If you have nothing there, it shows that default selection required on this. Otherwise, you can put whatever you want. So you can put a little help. But how do I make all this other stuff disappear? Which I think is great because then it's not distracting people. You actually just put, thank you, Katie, a little bit of text in that box. I learned from an accessibility standpoint, it's better to put something rather than the period I was using. No data. You can't see it, though, because it's the same color as the background. So it is displaying something. It says no data. So if an accessibility screen reader is reading through, it shows no data. But to your eye, it looks blank. Just the same color background as the font. You could actually type anything you want in there, but just keep in mind the screen readers will be reading whatever it is you put in there. This sounds like maybe a challenge I shouldn't have laid out for people, but super simple. It just says don't show anything. And so this dashboard, when people use it, when they get there, they're not overly distracted because there's really nothing to look at except for this little text at the top. And what it's doing is saying, all right, first here you have, this is what I want you to click, step one. And once you click that, it then influences these other sections. And after you click that, two things happen. It shows the bar on the top, and it also lets you click on the subtopic. And that subtopic then updates the rest of it and displays everything. So again, it's just this, wait till this happens, display this, and figuring out this flow is part of the challenge and also part of the fun. But I will tell you that this having you think about this and try to design this ahead of time will make it much more likely that people can understand and benefit from your dashboards. Okay, the last two. This one solved a giant problem of mine, and I think it's a problem that a lot of people have, which is that they don't have perfect data. Raise your hand if all your data are perfect. If you have an entry in every single cell, right? This is a big problem when trying to filter using dashboards. So I had this great mapping project with lumpfish in the Gulf of Maine. We wanted to display data, but it turned out that there was a whole bunch of data missing. So for example, bottom temperature was only for 16% of the sites. So when I added the bottom temperature filter to the dashboard, this is what it looked like. Because even if the filter was not being used at that moment, it constrained the data display. I was like, this is terrible. What if I had a filter that just told that other filter not to work yet? Like, wait, filter, you will have your day. Don't do anything right now. And how I figured out how to do that is by using a field I created called filter that has the same value in it for every single record. So that gave me something that I could use as a filter whose only job was to tell that other filter to wait. So how did that work? Well, the default, when you turn it on, is to say, it's either not being used or it's number one. Well, what is number one? Number one is everything. But the way that I showed it on the screen was on and off. So basically, off, don't work at all. On, show the things that have the number one, which is everything. So how does that look here? When you click off, this little thing says filter is off. This filter is not active, and it's letting all the data display. And if somebody says, all right, I want to turn the bottom filter on, it'll then let you use that filter, and then you're subject to whatever constraints the data have. The very last one. Have anybody had the debate? Have the panel out. Have the panel float. Will people know the panel is there? Are they going to be patient enough to click on the panel? So I said, it's kind of a bummer that you can only put filters either up here in the header, or you can put filters in the header or the sidebar. But there's a whole bunch of screen real estate on a dashboard where filters are prohibited. You cannot put them there. Have you ever wanted to put a little button you could click somewhere in the dashboard? So I didn't find a way to do everything, but I did find a way to put little on and off filters right in the body of the dashboard. So over here on the top, above Blue Much and Cyanoscope, you can see hide and show. And if you click on any of these things, they act like filters. So when you click on hide show, above Blue Much, it turns off every element related to Blue Much in the entire dashboard. Or if you click on the hide show above Cyanoscope, it changes it off. And there was a big amount of people that said, well, look at how many data layer points are in here. It's too much. What if people are just interested in the past week? How can we just say, show me the past week? And so when you click on the past week button, it filters it only to the past week. So I hope you've been paying attention, because I used many of the tricks I talked about previously to make this happen. These are the 3 tricks that help this to work. First of all, single cell table, single row, single column, but remember, it's only one value, the whole thing. So not only is it a single column table, it is a single column, single row table, because there's only one answer that's there. And using load categories, you can have it say whatever you want. The constraint I put for the day was up here in the filter, and then you just connect it to whatever element you want to influence. So single table, single row, filter, connect, and it works. This one was a little tougher. Pretty much did the same thing. Fortunately, each of these data layers had that thing that only had one right answer. And it turned out to be false, was the thing in every column, and I just put hide show. But in order to get it to show nothing, I had to break it. So I used a completely different data layer, the opposite one, and I designed something that would never work. It's trying to talk back and forth between the layers, and the answer for delta is always false, so I had it talking to the country in the other layer. Sometimes I make things that I know will fail on purpose, because when it fails, then everything is hidden. So by clicking on one button, it says, hey, make the match across these other data layers. And like, hey, I don't know how to answer this, and so all of the things turn off. I will say that this is a lot all at once. You're still looking forward, so that's good. Fail early and often, and be sure to show things to people, and save as is your friend. I don't know how many times I've built something and said, oh crap, where's the undo button, right? Well, just go ahead and save as. I'm sure we all have folders that look like this in our lives. It's okay, you can experiment. And what I've been trying to do is put some of this stuff on a single web page. It's still always a work in progress, but I have a link on that page that has a lot of the different dashboards I've created, and you can also choose, like, oh, I want to see which ones have custom icons, or I want to see which ones use this, and then it'll show you Meta. It's a dashboard of dashboards. And if you ever use any of these ideas or have things you want to share, of course, being an Esri thing, I have a little Survey 123 link in there, or feel free to let me know, because I'm always interested in learning from all of you, and feel free to ask me any of these things, and I'd love to talk more with any of you about dashboards.